Senator Michael Padilla is visiting us from District 14. Going to have the next half an hour conversation with him and talk about why he ran and how the campaign went and everything. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jemiah. I appreciate the invitation and congratulations on a successful show. I think this is your 17th season?
No, second.
Second,
no,
okay.
That's the 17th.
All right.
I wish I could say that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about when you got into the race and how you decided and why you decided you wanted to run for state senate.
Well, and I think you know, you and I've talked, over the last couple of years. I ran in 2008, lost a very, very tight race for state senate. I was determined to win a seat in the state senate because the area that I'm representing, I grew up in that area. I grew up in Los Padillas, which is a very historic area in New Mexico. And with redistricting and all of the growth on the Southwest Mesa, we were able to get a new Senate seat. There's still 42 senators in the state of New Mexico, but because of all the growth in that area, we were able to push another seat into that area. And so I ran and had a very contentious primary, one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life outside of raising my children. And it turned out well for us. We ended up winning the primary by over 10% and garnered about 71% of the vote in the general election.
And this is a brand new district, right?
Yeah, essentially it is. It adds additional representation to the valley, basically. So the major boundaries, I tell people, are about 70% to 75% of the southwest quadrant of Bernalillo County. So you have I-40 on the north, I-25 in the east, the Isleta Reservation in the south, and then all the way out to the Rio Puerco line.
It's pretty big.
It's a huge district,
It's huge. When I first looked at it, I said, well, this is a pretty huge district.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling? You're state senator. First.
Well, I ask myself every day, Jemiah, what have I done to myself? Because I spent 14 months running, and I gave it 12 to 20 hours a day of my life for 14 months. And then the moment I got elected, I felt like my rear end was on fire because everybody wanted to meet with me about everything, and I tried to get to absolutely every single meeting and everybody that wanted to meet with me. How else would I know what they wanted me to work on? Exactly. And so, and then the session started, and I felt like I was trying to take a sip from a fire hydrant because on any given day, you're going to cast anywhere from 50 to 100 votes, sometimes more. Toward the end of the session, you're voting every 2 to 3 minutes. So, I've had to read all the bills overnight and make sure I had all of my questions ready, and it was quite an exercise.
Yeah. Tell us when you first got there. I know you're in the education. No, you're in the corporation and.
Well, I actually ended up on 2 committees, which I'm very excited about. One of them is corporations and transportation, and that's one committee. And then the other committee is the education committee. Yeah. So talk about the best of both worlds for our area that I represent, looking toward economic development for that area, and then also our schools are badly in need of repair and support, and so wound up on the education committee. So it ended up being a very good assignment for me.
And I know you love education. I know you worked a lot towards it. Tell me anything specific that you were working on, or worked on, any specific bill that you worked on that you want to bring up, either one of those.
Well, what folks probably don't understand is there's anywhere from 800 to 1,000 bills dropped in a session. I ended up dropping, as a freshman, 19 bills. Wow. I didn't realize how much work that would be. Essentially, I was at the Capitol nonstop. Because in addition to the committees that I sat on, I also needed to be at 2 to 3 committees per bill as they were being heard by the committees and then onto the floor and debating them that way. Then they start all over again on the House side. And so I'm very happy to report that I was able to get 5 bills on the governor's desk. For a freshman, that's remarkable.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Well, I was the first freshman to get a bill all the way through, and my peers actually framed the bill and the vote count and actually gave that to me as a gift, so I was very grateful for that. I'm pretty sure that the governor will sign at least 3 of my bills. One of them, I don't know. It's a school board election bill. And then the 5th one is on developmental disabilities and creating a fund so that they don't have to, these are folks who really need our help, so that they don't have to start their legal proceedings over again once the fiscal year ends. The 3 bills that I'm sure that the governor will sign are, 2 of them are jobs bills. One of them is for commercial feed producers in New Mexico, a couple of them in my district up and down Isleta Boulevard. Oñate feed in my district. It's been there since I was a little guy. I've been going to the dock ever since I was little. But basically, it's going to help them to be more competitive across the country and across the world. And so it's going to create some jobs. Another one is the airline employee shifts and hours. There's some really funky laws.
Talk about that one a little bit. I know I was going to ask you about the airline one. What does that have to do?
Well, basically, if you're in a collective bargaining agreement with an airline, this doesn't apply. So whatever collective bargaining arrangement you have, all of those rules and those laws apply. If you're not, though, you cannot swap your shift with another employee under current law since 1973, if you can believe it. Oh. I was 1 year old at the time. And so we have some really antiquated laws on the books. So let's say you and I worked for an airline on the ground here in Albuquerque, and you had to go see your son play baseball, and you wanted to go, and you wanted to swap shifts with me. You couldn't do that. You had to take unpaid time or vacation time. So basically, my legislation cleared all of that up and allowed you and I to work out a deal between the two of us so that you can use your vacation time for vacation rather than because you just happen to have to use it for some small thing that you're doing throughout the year. So it's an employee-friendly bill. It really helped employees to actually enjoy. It's going to help them enjoy their jobs, and have a higher quality of life.
There was another one that stood out to me, which is the call center. Something to do with the call center, the jobs being outsourced.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that one?
Well, we're a citizen legislature in New Mexico, and I'm a call center expert. That's what I do for a living, outside of my political life. And so CWA, the Communication Workers of America, came to me and they said, well, gosh, why don't we try to keep good call center jobs in New Mexico and the bad ones, the fly-by-night call centers that come and leave right away, take our tax incentive and credit dollars, and then leave the state after those dollars are gone. And so I said, absolutely. There's 32 other states that are actually working through this legislation right now. There's a federal bill as well, which basically says if you're going to come into New Mexico and you want to do business, you want to do business in the state of New Mexico for your call center, and you want to partake in incentives or credits or things of that nature, if you leave before your required time in the state, then you have to pay that money back to us. So it's a good bill for the taxpayers so that we get our dollars.
So there's a benefit for the taxpayers.
Absolutely. It's a huge benefit. And then it also says, to the call center companies that come here, it keeps good call center jobs here, which typically pay higher hourly wages, anywhere from $10 to $15 to $20 an hour. The call centers that are kind of fly-by-night and leave after the dollars are gone, we don't really necessarily want those call centers here. We want the ones that are going to stay here for 10, 15, and 30 years. Then the second part of the bill was, if you wanted to do business with the state of New Mexico, you had to put a call center or part of your operation in New Mexico. And so that's really exciting because when you think about it, when someone's calling the Department of Tourism as an example, they don't want to be talking to someone in Tuscaloosa or across the world. They want to talk to someone in New Mexico who can look out the window and see New Mexico.
Exactly.
So.
Hold that thought for a second. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the other bills that you worked on.
All right.
Okay, we'll be right back with State Senator Michael Padilla, District 14. So when we come back, we'll go into We're back with State Senator Michael Padilla, and he's out of District 14, newly elected State Senator. Well, I wanted to congratulate you again on your win there. Let's get into some of the specific bills, and I know there's a thing you wanted to bring up about the capital outlay and things like that. Let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll, as we get into the conversation, we'll bring some of the other stuff you worked on.
Well, the one bill that I think is really important to all New Mexicans is what's called the capital outlay. Basically, that's bricks and mortar projects that happen all over the state. And because of New Mexico's economic downturn and the downturn in the country, very little capital was actually invested into the state over the last couple of years. So we all got together and worked really hard to develop a budget and find dollars all over the state to put into this budget, the capital outlay budget. And essentially what that does is we're able to get $1.2 million per state senator to actually put into their district. And so we're going to see a ton of work in our area, from the public schools to roads, libraries, enhancing certain areas like, new fire engines, a fire truck, for the West Mesa, things of that nature.
And how much money is involved in this?
Well, this is going to wind up being $1.2 million. Then I was also able to work with all of the senators and a couple of representatives to raise another $1.2 million to come into our district for the Valle de Oro National Wildlife Refuge. That's going to be located on South 2nd. It's going to become a federal installation. And so basically it's the old Price's Dairy property. It keeps the last large piece of land in the South Valley in one piece and intact. And so what that's going to do is basically it's going to bring people from Brazil, from Australia, from all over the country to come into New Mexico and show up in our district. And it's a big business. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these movies about these people who go bird watching or whatever. Yeah, but as it turns out, New Mexico and Albuquerque, this particular area, is in the flight path for the annual migration of every type of bird in the world. It's incredible. Yeah. And so they're going to come in, and when the birds start landing there, basically, people are going to come and see them. They're going to want to come and see them and spend their money here.
Out in Socorro, they had something there. There's a wildlife refuge there or something?
Well, there is another one in San Antonio, New Mexico, and it's a wildlife refuge, but for all wildlife. This is simply going to be for birds and birds.
I was thinking of cranes in Socorro, right?
And there's another small one there that I believe, and we actually have about 3 of these that are going to take shape over the next 15 or 20 years. This is going to be the first urban wildlife refuge, a wildlife refuge for birds. And so it's very exciting because people are going to come here. They're going to spend money in our restaurants, at our hotels, our gas stations, you name it. It's going to be a great economic boon for base economic development dollars. So bottom line, I was able to raise $2.4 million in capital project money for our district. I'm very proud of that.
So I'm sure you have something going on with the town halls and stuff. Do you want to talk about that and what they pertain to and all that? Is it just general town halls, or?
They're general. Well, they're going to be about the legislature, the legislative session that just ended, and then also I'm going to be kicking off a gigantic job fair. And we'll be discussing it at these town halls as well. But on April 2nd, April 3rd, and April 4th, we're going to be having town halls I like to host them in 3 different parts of the district for convenience, so that, because it's a huge district. So I try to put it in the middle of neighborhoods where people can actually come to them.
How do you see, I know you're a freshman senator, I don't want to put too much heat on you with the budget and all that, but I know you said you signed it. You signed the budget.
I did vote for the budget itself.
Okay.
But then on the last day, something really unusual happened, and
this was all done last minute, right?
Well, in literally the last 47 minutes of the session. Yeah. So legally,
there was a lot of complaint about that. There was a lot of senators, and everyone was complaining that it was kind of shoved down their throat last minute.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you hear about this happening, and we have a perfect example of where this happens. It happens in Washington all the time, it happens in Santa Fe. And we have a perfect example this very session that just ended. So legally, we're bound by law to conclude our session at noon on the 60th day. So we did that. Now, we had a film production tax credit bill that we passed, and the governor vetoed. So I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit. So she vetoes this bill, the governor does, and then they try to bring the bill back again. So we work out some of the differences and everything. Then when it arrives on our desks on the floor on the last day, it's tacked, in addition to that, and this is what you kind of hear this in the movies, but it actually happens in real life, a 35-page tax incentive and credit that had nothing to do with film incentives and credits was tacked on to this bill. We had 47 minutes left, Jemai, to review this. So I read through the whole entire thing as quickly as I could. Yes, because some of it's redundant language. It basically repeats what's in the previous section. So you're able to kind of scan it, very quickly. But one of the things that I was most concerned about was the hold harmless provision in this particular tax package, which basically over 15 years removes hold harmless. So it's really going to hurt small communities that don't have a large tax base. That was in this bill. And so smaller communities are going to have to do something to make up that tax shortfall that they're going to have. Well, one of the things that I campaigned against, and something that I will never, and this is the first show, I'll say it, I've never said this on television before, but I'm going to say it to you. I will never vote for a food tax, ever. Because literally, if this were our kitchen table, it would be like taking 7% of the food off of this table, and our families are already hurting. And I wanted to, so I was the first senator to stand up against this bill on the floor of the Senate.
So in this bill, there was something to do with the food?
Well, it could result in a food tax because cities and towns are going to have to make up
You
this
see, most
revenue
people don't
somehow.
know this. They don't know
No,
exactly
they don't.
what's in the 35 pages.
Yeah. So that's one example. I looked at this right away. I looked at it very suspect and said, wait a minute, this is not good for working families. It's not good for people. And so I was the first senator to stand up on the floor with that 47 minutes left, and I grilled him. And I said, look, is this ever going to result in a food tax? Well, no, it's not going to. The sponsors of this particular amendment to this bill. I said, well, show me in the bill, in the amendment, where it's not going to result in a food tax. And they really had a hard time doing that. So at the end of it, there were 8 of us on the floor in the Senate that voted against it. I adamantly opposed it, and I voted against it.
Hold that thought for a second. Okay, we'll take a short break. We'll take a short break, and we'll be back with Senator Michael Padilla. Okay. When we come back, we'll take it right from there.
Okay.
And then we're back with State Senator Michael Padilla from District 14. We're talking to him about various things that happened in the 2013 legislature. Let's get into the budget again.
Okay.
I know you were talking about what happened in the final phases of it and stuff. So we'll let you take it from there.
Well, it's a classic example of trying to cram something down legislators' throats at the last minute. Mm-hmm. We absolutely supported the film credit tax because 2 things happened with it. One, it increased the percentage to motivate film production to come to New Mexico mm-hmm. in greater amounts, mm-hmm. but then it also right-sized, if you will, for TV series and television. So when you come in, you do a movie, it's a couple of months, it's jobs, maybe up to a year. Now, a TV series, I think we all know, sometimes they really take off. Look at Breaking Bad.
Yes, it took off for many,
Yeah, some of the other shows that we've had here in New Mexico, they've taken off. So those end up producing jobs for years. And what a wonderful thing.
Correct.
But in order to get that done, basically the administration, the governor, held over our head this tax package, which basically it lowered corporate income, CIT or corporate income tax, mm-hmm. and it will benefit manufacturers. And I think that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But you don't cram it down our throats in the last 47 minutes of a session.
Because many complained that they didn't have a chance to read it. There was a lot of things in there that they weren't sure about or something to that effect.
Well, this is how it goes, okay? So you're on the floor, mm-hmm. and you're sitting there, and you're about to debate a bill, and suddenly one of the sergeant-at-arms that work the floor, mm-hmm. and the attendants, they drop this huge amount of paper on your desk, and you look at it, and you, oh my gosh, this is an amendment. Yeah. And so you start looking at, oh my gosh, it's 35 pages. So like I said, I read it as quickly as I could, but I wanted to make sure that the taxes that it would, with the hold harmless going away, that to pay for all of these other tax incentives, the manufacturing tax incentive and the high wage job tax incentive and the corporate income tax reduction. Mm-hmm. So this hold harmless goes away to sort of balance that. I wanted to make sure that it would never result in a food tax, and I will never support a food tax in the state of New Mexico.
Early childhood?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I ran on this issue. I started working on early childhood, 2 years before I was elected to the legislature. I come from the business community. I'm a business owner myself. And I look at our economy in New Mexico and I say, gosh, we need to do something that structurally improves and changes New Mexico. I firmly believe that early childhood education and intervention will do that because basically what it does is it helps excite children about learning really from when they're in the womb, if you will, helping mothers to be prepared to have this child. And then that first couple of years of life, it helps excite them about education, reading, math, arithmetic, all the things that are important to succeeding in school. So by the time students actually hit kindergarten, teachers in our public education system, they're presented with better raw material, if you will. So if you go and you build the building that we're sitting in right now with bad material, or the material that's not ready to put together a structure, it's going to fall down on itself, right?
Correct.
But if it's great material, then this building's going to stand here for decades. And so with early childhood, what we wind up doing is preparing kids to hit kindergarten and succeed, higher reading scores at 3rd grade, better math and science scores at 8th grade. And do you know, Jemai, what our dropout rate is going to be this year in our public schools?
I know it's getting pretty high there.
46%.
Yeah, it's pretty high there.
That's incredible.
I don't know how it is as far as nationally, but I think we're pretty...
We're almost at the bottom of the list. It's not a place we want to be.
Yes.
Because companies look at New Mexico and they look at our dropout rate. Don't kid yourself. Because if we have lower dropout rates, then the kids are actually going on to college and university and having a better skill set, to work for a company and to be a part of a large organization. And so with early childhood, we actually wind up intervening at a much earlier age to help kids succeed. And therefore, our graduation rates are going to be so much higher at the end. And that's really going to change New Mexico for decades. Instead of just throwing money at companies and incentives and credits and things of that nature, and then the companies leave us after a couple of years when all those credits are gone, and then we have to give them even more credits for them to come back.
Yeah.
Why not just fix it structurally, fix our workforce? And it's going to make New Mexico look so much more attractive, and it's going to change and improve New Mexico for decades.
I think you're doing a great job. Everybody's proud of you in your district. I know
thank you.
We know each other a little bit.
Yes,
so
we do.
I'm proud of you as a friend. Anything specific that you want to talk about regarding your district? We got maybe a minute or so left.
Sure. Well, you give a politician, Jemai, you should know this of all people, you give a politician a microphone, he'll talk for hours. But at the end of the day, I want the folks to know that, I'm not in Santa Fe, you sent me up there to work. I'm not fooling around here. Again, first freshman to get a bill all the way through the process. 5 bills on the governor's desk. My predecessor was able to get 1 bill in 4 years. And that's the kind of work. And that's the kind of work that I'm going to produce.
And do you feel that she's going to veto any?
I'm pretty confident she'll sign 3 of them. One of them on school board elections, I don't know. And then the 5th one, I'm pretty sure she'll sign that one as well. It's regarding the Developmental Disabilities Planning Council.
I see. Is there anything that you would like to work on as far as next year? Is there anything in specific that you think that you want to work on? Well,
2 things. One is, and I think this is probably a good 4 to 50-year proposition, which is our economy. It's not just about fixing taxes.
Because unemployment is I believe it's 6.6%.
And on its way up. I mean, New Mexico is projected to be one of the slowest growing states economically for the next 5 to 10 years, literally the slowest growing. So my work in the legislature is going to be around 2 things, the economy and education, and they do go hand in hand, and that's exactly what you'll see me working on for as long as the voters want me to be there.
Do you think economically we should come out of the woods in the next, say, 5 years?
It's hard to say. I mean, if we don't do some of these very critical things like early childhood education and truly turn New Mexico around, then I fear that maybe we won't. Because we can't just give away the barn to get a company to come to New Mexico. We have to do all the other things as well so that they'll stay here.
How do you see us as far as, say, Arizona, Colorado, and Texas? How do you see us? Are we working with any of these states as far as our economy goes?
It's hard to say. I mean, New Mexico is a little bit uncompetitive with regard to our tax structure, and so I think that some of these changes that we're trying to make now we need to plan them better, not in the last 47 minutes of a legislative session. Yeah. If we can make some of those changes, but that's just one thing. Companies look at our education system as well. As I mentioned earlier, our dropout rate. If our kids are dropping out, companies, it's a checkbox. They're going to mark that box and say, New Mexico may not be the place we want to build our widgets or our products. But if New Mexico can turn that piece around, then I think that we're in much better shape.
Thank you for coming on. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. We'd love to have you back again.
Sure, whenever you'd like.
Anytime you'd like to come back, just give me a call and we'll have you back. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with LNG. I'd like to thank Michael Padilla, State Senator for District 14, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.